Hello everybody, welcome back to another episode of Access Blockbusters Pod. It has been quite the past couple of weeks here in the movie news space, and so these podcast episodes these days on the channel and just all the videos and all the news that's been coming out, it's been really exciting. But guys, welcome back to another episode of Access Blockbusters Pod. Thank you guys so much for joining. Last week we did our sort of breakdown. I know it was a little bit late and, a little bit late coverage of San Diego Comic-Con 2024, but this time I wanted to kind of be more on top of it. So today we are doing our coverage of D23, the Disney Expo, where they usually have a panel, which they did this year on Friday, where they talk about all of their upcoming projects, and, well, maybe not all of their upcoming projects, but some of their bigger, more relevant upcoming projects, and kind of showcase what they got going on. So we will discuss at the end of this podcast episode. And by the way, this is probably going to be a long one, so I don't want to delay too much longer because there's a lot to talk about, surprisingly. We will talk about, though, at the end of this podcast episode, whether or not it was a satisfying D23, and I leave that up to you as well. So either before we get going or just anytime during the podcast episode, leave your thoughts down below on D23 as a whole. What did you think of the announcements that were made? What about the ones that you were hoping they would make official? Let me know in the comments down below. And if you haven't subscribed to the Access Blockbusters YouTube channel, if you're watching on YouTube, thank you so much for joining us here today. Really appreciate it. Can't wait to talk about all these announcements with you guys. Make sure to give the video a like, leave a comment down below with your thoughts, and let me know what you think about the podcast. Thank you guys so much, by the way, who are on the channel yesterday, or I guess 2 days ago, by the time I'm recording this on Saturday, and hopefully it'll come out on Sunday, who were on the channel to watch the breaking news coverage. There wasn't a whole lot to announce compared to previous years, but there were some trailers that I reposted on the YouTube channel. So if you missed any of the big trailers, specifically Marvel and Star Wars, and also just the Percy Jackson one, just for fun, then yeah, you can feel free to check those out on the YouTube channel as well. But yeah, thank you guys so much for joining on the channel for that. There was some Avatar news I posted in the community tab as well, which is another great place to kind of keep up to date with the YouTube channel. So there is that. But thank you guys so much for all the support. Make sure to subscribe, give the video a like if you're watching on YouTube. And if you're listening on Spotify, thank you guys so much as well. Make sure to give the podcast a rating as well. There might also be, I apologize for this, there's some stuff going on outside of where I'm recording. You might hear some background noise. I apologize for that. I'm going to try to edit it out as much as I can and keep it to a bare minimum, but what can you do? But yeah, if you're listening on Spotify, thank you so much, and let me know what the experience is like, how it's going, and give the show a rating on Spotify as well. So how today's episode is going to go is I'm going to recap basically the 5 major sections of the D23 panel, and I'm not going to go in their order. I've grouped because I think they kind of went in a sort of random haphazard order. Obviously, I was not there to personally see what was going on, but I was following on Twitter feeds and all that kind of stuff, and so they kind of went in a little bit of a roundabout order there. But that being said, I've grouped them as best as I can into 5 different categories. So we're going to go Disney animation, then we're going to go Pixar, then we're going to go live action Disney, followed by Star Wars, and then concluding with Marvel at the end. And then we'll kind of do a little wrap up of my overall thoughts as well. I also want to give a side note that I will not be covering every single little thing that was in the panel. So if you want to check out literally every single detail, I'd recommend checking out some of the live blogs that were done, or some of the Twitter feeds, like discussing film is what I was following, just to keep track of everything. I just want to give some of my thoughts, because this is a recap, but also some analysis as well. Just my personal thoughts on some of these projects that they announced and gave updates on. There was an announcement that Dwayne Johnson is going to be making a film about monster trucks called Monster Jam, I think. There was an announcement of Freaky Friday 2. Those are, announcements that I saw, but I don't really have a lot of thoughts about, so I won't be really covering them in depth. So if you notice something that's missing that you'd like me to talk about, just leave a comment down below, and I'll be sure to respond there. But these are all the major announcements from those 5 different categories. So without further ado, let's start out with Disney animation. There are 3 sort of announcements, I suppose, in varying capacities that I want to talk about here. Certainly not the most substantial announcements made in this section. That being said, let's start out with perhaps the smallest bit of news, which is Zootopia 2. I believe we got a little bit of promo art as well from Zootopia 2. And I don't know if it's a poster officially or a promo art, but anyways, we got to see a little bit of the new logo. Obviously, Zootopia was one of the most successful films that Disney Animation had made alongside their Frozen franchise, and so it was kind of curious, that they had waited so long to make a Zootopia 2, but we knew it had officially been announced, so we knew that it was going to be in the works, and so we just got some more updates with Zootopia 2, and really the only thing that I wanted to highlight here is that Ki Kwan, obviously from Everything Everywhere All at Once, recent fame in Loki Season 2 as Ouroboros, will be voicing a reptile named Gary. In what capacity, what the character is the character a villain? I have a sidekick, a new supporting character. I have no idea. But Ki Kwan will be joining the cast of Zootopia 2. And look, I mean, good for Ki Kwan, right? He made the ultimate comeback from acting. He was obviously in Goonies and Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom all the way back when he was a child actor, and then he kind of quit acting for a while and really made just the biggest and most heartwarming, triumphant comeback with Everything Everywhere All at Once, which, for those of you who have been watching the channel know that I wasn't as high on as most other people, but I really can appreciate the dedication that Ki Kwan brought to the role, and he obviously won his Best Supporting Actor Academy Award for that. And so it's really awesome to see that he's getting a lot more work for really fun projects. It seems like he's really enjoying his time in the Disney family as well. So that's awesome to see for him. So there is Zootopia 2. Next up, the announcements around the Frozen franchise is what I wanted to talk about next, which obviously Frozen is perhaps the most popular and lucrative franchise that Disney has. The first one and the second one, I believe, making well over $1 billion. These are immensely popular films. The first one took the world by storm, and the second one came out, I want to say somewhat recently, perhaps not. Maybe it's been a while. First one coming out, I think, something like 10 years ago now, which is just unbelievable. It seems like these films take a long time to come out. Case in point, Disney Animation came up there on the stage and talked about Frozen 3, which they say will release in 2027. And just kind of seeing that date, it reminds you just how far away some of these things are. 2027, it seems like, oh yeah, in the blink of an eye it'll be here, and I'm sure it will, right? I remember thinking those kinds of things when Marvel announced their entire Phase 3 slate in, 2015? 2014 even? 2014, they announced films up until 2019, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's crazy. Lo and behold, they came and went, faster than I could have even imagined. So 2027 will be here before we know it. But it's still a long ways away, and it's really interesting to think about the fact that they, some franchises, I always bring this up because I think it's remarkable, and this is not the standard, by the way, just, for a franchise, but the Spider-Man trilogy in the MCU made 3 films in 6 years, pretty much, and that's just incredible, especially considering how high quality I personally think they are. Other franchises, though, seem to take a lot longer, and Frozen seems to be one of them. It seems like they'll be making the third film, and it'll be something like 15 years between the first and the third film. So that's interesting. But again, as long as the film is high quality, which I'm sure it will be, then, because this is their cornerstone franchise, then I have no doubt that everything will turn out great on that front. So Frozen 3 releasing in 2027, as well as a hint, apparently, towards a Frozen 4. So look out 2035, I suppose. That's not an official date. I'm just making something up. But yeah, I mean, Disney's going to keep making these movies as long as they keep making money and as long as they're successful, and who can blame them for that? So Frozen 3 and maybe Frozen 4. And the final announcement, perhaps the biggest one coming from Disney Animation, and the one that they kicked the panel off with, actually, is Moana 2, which is, I think, their most immediate film coming out. I could be wrong. Moana 2, which looks like it could be their third billion-dollar film of the year. Obviously, the first Moana was just a smash hit with Dwayne Johnson, and the young woman who's playing Moana, who I can't ever pronounce her name right, and I don't want to butcher it here on the channel. So, but she did an amazing job. She's a phenomenal singer. Obviously, How Far I'll Go is it's one of the songs that lives in my head rent free. That's fantastic. It's coming out November 27th of this year. And like I said, it could join Inside Out 2, which is, I think, nearing the $1.5 billion mark, which is crazy, and Deadpool and Wolverine, which will cross the $1 billion mark probably by the time this podcast comes out. And it could be the third one. So we want to talk about, Disney, quote unquote, in a slump. And Disney was in a slump over the past couple of years, but it looks like they're really coming back in full force. They have basically all of their quadrants firing on all cylinders, except for Star Wars. But Disney Animation, potentially, as long as Moana 2 is good, will reach $1 billion. I have no doubt about that. Obviously, Inside Out 2, Pixar made $1.5 billion, and Deadpool and Wolverine could be approaching $1.5 billion as well. So really exciting time for Disney, I'm sure, and for Bob Iger, and most importantly, I suppose, for the shareholders. But anyways, they talked about Moana 2, and then they released another full trailer, probably the last one, maybe one more before the film comes out. But it looks really fun. Looks like it captures the spirit of the first one really well. For these kinds of films, me personally, I just look for, the same kind of tone that was set in the first films. And I think Disney Animation has done a really good job with that, bringing back the cast and adding some new characters in there. It looks like Moana's sister is going to have a big role, at least emotionally, in the film. It looks like from the trailer, it looks like the fact that she's leaving the sister behind, or she left the sister behind, is going to be a big part of the emotional journey for Moana, which is really cool. Obviously, Maui is back, and the pig is also joining on for the ride as well. So yeah, it looks really fun. These films, nothing really stands out to me. Frankly, even the Pixar trailers, which we'll talk about next in the next segment, these Disney Animation and Pixar trailers are, they're not really targeted towards, I think, me and people of my age. But that's not to say that the films themselves don't target, people like me, because I really enjoy a lot of these films, and so I really can't wait to see what comes next. So yeah, those were the big announcements from the Disney Animation side. Let me know in the comments of the YouTube video which announcement or which project you're most excited for from the Disney Animation side. All right, with all that out of the way, let's get into the Pixar announcements now. So this is the second chunk of announcements, and there's a little bit more to talk about here as we move along. So yeah, let's get started with the Disney Plus announcements that were announced, because it looks like Pixar is really going to jump in here, and they had a series on Disney Plus called Monsters at Work, based on the Monsters Inc. universe, which I think I watched the first season and maybe a little bit of the second season, and I thought it was cute. I really, it wasn't a series I looked forward to every week, but, if I was on Disney Plus and I had finished an episode of, I don't know, Mandalorian or Loki or whatever, and I saw that it was there, it's like a 20-minute episode, I thought, yeah, I'll just pop it on. So really cute, but it looks like they're going to have two more sort of not mainstream, but mainline Disney Plus projects in the pipeline now. So the first one is one that we knew about, called Dream Productions, which we had heard about a couple weeks ago, or maybe a month ago or so, after Inside Out 2, that they had been quietly developing this entire series set between Inside Out 1 and Inside Out 2 that takes place in that dream factory, which I believe was in the first film, where they're producing all the dreams in Riley's head. And, I think that this is a really inventive idea, and I think there's a lot of potential here. I don't know anything about the story itself, but I think that as long as, with these Pixar projects, I think as long as you get the general premise and it seems inventive and everything like that, then you just got to trust Pixar. They've been on a roll lately. My faith in them with a couple projects they announced here is stretched a little bit, but I'm always reminded that every time I kind of doubt the concept, they usually prove me wrong. Almost always, in fact, prove me wrong. And so I have no doubt that it will be the same this time. So yeah, we'll see how it turns out. But obviously, I've mentioned Inside Out 1 is perhaps my favorite film of all time. I think it's one of the most profound, deep and yet enjoyable, entertaining films. It has just everything that you want. It makes you laugh, it makes you cry, and it tells a really interesting and profound story creatively. So yeah, and I loved Inside Out 2. You can go check out my review of it on the channel in a previous episode of Access Blockbusters Pod. But needless to say, I'm very much looking forward to this when it comes out. Second series that they talked about is the other series. Actually, this series was announced a long time ago, but it looks like it's coming out on December 6th, so very soon, in fact. I think Dream Productions will come out next year, I believe, but this series will be coming out at the end of the year, December 6th, and that is Win or Lose. Win or Lose was a series that was announced a long time ago, I believe. and they're finally ready to release it. And they released a short trailer. It was really short, and it didn't show a lot. It showed a lot of baseball, which, kind of just on a personal note, I love baseball. Baseball is my favorite sport to watch and to play. So that got me interested, but really not a whole lot here. But it was the premise that they talked about a long time ago that had me hooked even more so than this trailer. This trailer looked fine. It was really short, and I think that there were some hints towards the Pixar kind of profound, deep message that they usually have here. I thought there's the potential here with the idea of what does it mean to be a winner when it's at someone else's expense, because I believe this is the show that they said will be talking about the same game or the same event in many different perspectives. And I'm really curious to see how they're going to tackle this idea of, what does it mean to win? And what does it mean to lose? And what happens when, one person is happy that they won and the others... I'm just spitting out random ideas here. But I think the potential here, especially based on the trailer, which, didn't really move the needle for me, but was quite entertaining. I think the potential is all there to really have a good, solid, and maybe even something more than solid series going forward. So, those are the 2 Disney Plus shows that should be coming out sometime over the next year or so, which is very exciting. Now, let's talk about the 4 film announcements, which I was surprised. Let's talk about the film announcement we didn't get first, which we did not get a confirmation of Inside Out 3, which has to be inevitable. I mean, Inside Out 2 made $1.5 billion, and unlike some other franchises in the Disney canon, I think Inside Out 2 kind of proved to me, because, going into Inside Out 2, I mentioned this, I was like, how in the world are they going to follow up on the first Inside Out? And is it even worth it? Does it feel like a cash grab? Turns out, no. Sure, it was motivated by financial success and all that kind of stuff. But no, I think that there was a lot to explore in Riley's head as she grows up. And I think that there are even a couple more chapters that you can do in her head. You can do going to college, you can do adulthood, all that kind of stuff. And so I think that the Inside Out franchise is very rich, as long as they continue to mine it in a way that's creative, and not just, let's do, let's make a movie about every single month in her high school life. Like that's kind of lame. But anyways, there was an interview with Bob Iger, I think a couple days ago, where the reporter asked, are you interested in making Inside Out 3 based on the commercial and critical success of Inside Out 2? To which he responded, I'll just say, and I think he was smiling when he said this, I'll just say I'd also love an Inside Out 3. So everyone was kind of thinking, oh, Inside Out 3, obviously they're going to announce it at D23. They did not. At this point, if I had to bet, and I'm not a betting person, but if I had to bet, if they were going to make Inside Out 3, I would be very, very confident. I think it's pretty much an inevitability because, the film is one of the most critically successful Pixar films ever, if not the most, I think. Maybe Toy Story 3. No, I think it is. I think it's number 1. I could be wrong. It's certainly one of Disney's most profitable and successful films ever, and it's a franchise that resonates with everybody. It's truly a 4-quadrant franchise, and so I would be really surprised if they did not announce Inside Out 3. Probably next year, maybe at next year's D23 to release in 2026, something like that. Because I know that they announced Inside Out 2 at the 2023 Disney D23, and then they released it in 2024. So probably too quick of a turnaround. So there is that. Perhaps they're just working on the story. So that is the announcement we did not get. But we did get updates on 4 projects that Pixar will be releasing over the next few years. So let's talk about the first one, which is Elio, which is the first, the film that, the next Pixar film that we'll be releasing sometime next year. Not much that I know about this project personally. It seems like it'll be taking something like a space adventure or something like that. The only real big announcement here that I wanted to bring up is that Elio, Zoe Saldana, I should say, will be joining the cast of Elio. And that's always exciting. Disney, it seems a very tight-knit family. Obviously, if you're kind of in the Disney family, you have Chris Evans voicing Lightyear, Buzz Lightyear, and, you have now Zoe Saldana from the Avatar franchise, and obviously the Marvel franchise joining the Pixar franchise. So it seems like, they, Chris Pratt and Tom Holland, obviously, with Onward. So it seems like, once you're kind of in the Disney family, it seems like they're all really excited to join these Pixar projects as well, which is really exciting. I think Zoe Saldana is obviously a dynamic actress, and can't wait to see her in that. We did get our only announcement next up of our only newly announced original Pixar film, So we have Elio, which is an original film, and then we have a film called Hoppers, I believe. Hopper or Hopper? I think Hoppers. And I'm not gonna lie, the concept of this film really took me aback, and I would be lying to you if I told you that this concept made me excited for this film. This doesn't sound anything remotely interesting or up my alley. The way that they described it. That being said, I mean, I'm not in the business anymore of doubting Pixar, especially on the upswing that they've been on recently. So we'll have to see. I also, just on a side note, really am liking the fact that they're doing kind of one sequel project and one original project kind of alternating. I think that's a formula that should work for them pretty well because they have established IP, and also the more original projects they do, the more there are a couple things here. The more they continue on with their established franchises, as long as they're making good quality films like they did with Toy Story 4 and Inside Out 2, the more money they'll make to then invest in these original projects, which can then turn into franchises. So it all works in Disney synergy and Pixar synergy really well. So I do really like the strategy of having kind of an alternating original film and then a sequel, and you can kind of branch out more franchises from there. But anyways, this is the other original film called Hoppers, which is, I think, following a young girl, I think, whose mind can, go into the mind of beavers. And then there's some kind of plot there with the mayor who's voiced by John Hamm, I think. I mean, I look, it's not something that appeals to me at all, just based on the concept. But again, I mean, we'll talk about a franchise that I thought was not dead, but finished a long time ago. They revived it. I thought it was stupid, and then here we are, and I loved the film that they released. So, who knows? But this is a project that certainly raised more eyebrows than got me excited. But it will release in 2026, and I guess we'll have to see about that. So, next up is that aforementioned project and franchise, Toy Story 5. We got some announcements, and it's been a while since I've talked about the Toy Story franchise on the channel. But if you guys remember, I thought Toy Story 4 was a stupid idea. I thought, why in the world would we revive this franchise after the perfect ending that was given in Toy Story 3? Not only that, but I thought the trailers were atrocious. I thought that they were so cringy with Sporky and everything like that. But like I always tell you guys, I go into these projects with an open mind, and I want to give these projects the benefit of the doubt. And I went into Toy Story 4 just thinking I thought everything leading up to this was dumb, and just I thought it was really crazy. All the reviews were really good, and I just said, okay, here we go. And I ended up really, really liking, if not loving, the film, Toy Story 4. That being said, if you had asked me at the time, would you make Toy Story 5? I would have said no. But here we are, Toy Story 5, and again, I'm skeptical. Once again, I can't help it. I find myself being skeptical because I'm like, when are we ever going to let this franchise rest? Until it runs out of money? Or what? Because the concept for this film, on the one hand, is kind of interesting. On the other hand, it seems a little weird to me. And so the baseline of the concept is it's going to deal with the toys dealing with electronics, which I think is actually kind of interesting. What if Bonnie has a phone now? And are the phones sentient? What does that mean? AI, whatever. So I think that has a lot of potential. Really interesting. But then they talked about the villains of the film, which are 50 Buzz Lightyears that are malfunctioning because they're stuck on play mode or something like that. And I don't know. I mean, if you told me before Toy Story 4, because I didn't know who the real villain was, that Gabby Gabby was, this doll was the villain, I would have been like, that's kind of dumb, but okay. Then again, I mean, the Toy Story villains, like Lotso and Prospector and whatever. And I mean, Sid was scary. Sid was really scary. But yeah, I would have been like, I just don't know about that. Turned out that she was a great villain, really dynamic villain in that film. But 50 Buzz Lightyears being the villain, I count me as somebody who's skeptical. Obviously, this film releases in summer 2026. Obviously, I will be there day one, probably, to see the film. But I just don't know. At some point, it feels like the other shoe has to drop and the franchise is going to run out of steam. And I don't want that to happen. I really want this franchise to be as pristine as it can be because all 4 films, in my opinion, are amazing. And so I don't know. Keep pushing your luck, I guess. But also, I really hope that we can just keep this, keep the franchise at a place where it's revered as it is now. So there is that. The final announcement, though, and there was a little bit of a breaking news video that I posted on the YouTube channel regarding it, but we can talk about it more in depth here, is Incredibles 3. Incredibles 3 is officially announced, and it's coming out from Pixar. And I can't wait for this, because I've been saying ever since, like, out of all the franchises that Pixar has, Incredibles is one that should, in my opinion, because, I'm not a big fan of just continuing to make sequels for the sake of sequels, but Incredibles is one that absolutely should have a franchise. I mean, it's an action franchise, but it has heart, it has laughs, it kind of plays on really interesting riffs of the superhero genre, while also delivering really interesting messages. Screenslaver, I believe, was the villain of the second film. I thought that was really interesting. Obviously, Syndrome from the first film, really inventive. And so to hear that Brad Bird is coming back, who Brad Bird was the creator and the director of the first two films, is coming back, I believe, as the director, although I don't think I heard that explicitly, but I believe he's coming back as the director, is just so exciting. I mean, again, like I said, this is, of all of the franchises that should be getting sequels, it's The Incredibles, in my opinion, because even if you don't make the kind of Pixar film like Up, where you cry and sob in the first, because I don't think that the Incredibles films are the most profound, but I think it's a fun way to deal with a different quadrant and genre of films while also giving it that Pixar spin. And I can't wait, personally. I think that that's really, really exciting. So to recap with the films, as we wrap up this Pixar section here, the timeline looks to be, next up is Elio in 2025, which I believe will be the only Pixar film in 2025. Then in summer 2026, it looks like we'll get Toy Story 5. And then after that, it looks like, and nothing's confirmed. Hoppers could come out before Toy Story 5, but it seemed to me like Toy Story 5 was further along in development. So just, we have Elio in 2025. I believe we have Toy Story 5 in 2026 in the summer. And then I would assume we have Hoppers sometime in mid to late 2026. And then I think we'll have Incredibles 3 sometime in mid 2027. That's the Pixar slate coming up. I'm excited about it, Again, the balance of original content and franchises that we're all really excited about. So let me know in the comments down below what you're most excited about. I'm assuming it's going to be Incredibles 3 for almost every single one of you, but let me know if some of the other franchises are interesting and appealing to you as well. I'd love to hear in the comments down below. Next up on the D23 recap is Disney live action. Not a lot of announcements here to go through, but I think a couple exciting things, and we will talk about that going through here. But yeah, a couple trailers that I have some thoughts about, but not a lot to really dive into as we head towards the Star Wars and Marvel portion of the podcast episode. This is also a good time, I suppose, at the midway point of the podcast episode. If you're listening, let me know in the comments down below. What are you excited about? Make sure to subscribe to the channel, and give the video a like and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, let's keep on going. So Disney live action, there are 5 projects that I want to talk about. Like I said at the beginning of the podcast episode, not really going to touch on Freaky Friday or Freaky Friday 2 or a couple other things. These are the projects that I want to focus on and give some attention to. So let's kind of go let's end with the 2 trailers, and then let's go from, I suppose, sort of the what I'm least excited about to most excited about. So we'll start out with Tron Ares, which, not to say I'm not excited about it. In fact, these next 3 projects, I'm actually pretty excited about all of them to varying degrees. I remember when Tron Legacy came out. I was not old enough to see the original Tron in theaters or anything like that, but I was I watched Tron Legacy in theaters, and I really enjoyed it. The aesthetic is so unique, and it's such a simple concept, just having all these light kind of beams and light rails and rings and all these. But it's so cool. It's not quite retro, but it is retro in a weird way. But it's not. It's like it's so hard to explain. But I love the aesthetic of Tron. I kind of thought the franchise was dead after Tron Legacy. It's been almost 15 years now since that film came out, if not 15 years now at this point. But they're reviving the franchise with Tron Ares. Jared Leto is starring in it. And really the only big piece of news that came out from this is that they're going into the real world, which I don't know. I mean, I'm kind of two minds of this. On the one hand, there's not enough, like, just saying you're going into the real world, that's hardly anything to go off of anyways, so I don't even know what that means for the story. On the other hand, it kind of makes me a little nervous, because what I love about the Tron films is being in that world of Tron, and so we'll have to see what that looks like. But I'm trusting that they have something interesting cooking, and if not, then it's a franchise that sort of became a little niche, I suppose, but I think beloved by a lot of people in that community who enjoy those films. So excited to see what comes out of that. Next up, we have Avatar news. So James Cameron was on stage and he talked about Avatar 3, which has a title. I posted about this on the community tab. Avatar 3 will be called Avatar Fire and Ash. Now, on the one hand, because we knew from previous comments James Cameron had made that we would be exploring a fire tribe in Avatar 3. And I mean, on the one hand, right, it's getting a little corny and a little goofy now that every single film is dealing with a different element. Like the next one is going to be called Avatar Gust of Wind or what, I don't know. And Avatar, what haven't we done yet? Earth? We kind of did Earth in the first film. But anyways, because we know that Avatar will have 5 films, I think, which is crazy to me. But yeah, it's getting a little comical. Like, okay, we get it. Every single film explores a new tribe and all that kind of stuff. I'm hoping that 4 and 5 go in a little bit of a different direction than this. But, for the time being, I think it's interesting enough. Obviously, Avatar The Way of Water was revolutionary, again, in the way that it did visual effects and just the way that it explored the water. That was basically the only film I'd seen in 3D in maybe 5 or 6 years. And I purposely, chose 3D, not out of necessity to get a good seat or anything, because people had said, you got to watch this film in 3D. And sure enough, the 3D was remarkable in Avatar: The Way of Water. That's one of the films where I think that while the story was okay, in my opinion, it was good enough, is what I would say. The visuals were what really, really sold me on the film. And that's rare because I am rarely a person who thinks that the visuals, in terms of components that I look for in a film, it rarely outweighs other things like story and characters and plot and even music. But in that case, it was the case that the visuals were incredible. And so yeah, we'll see what he does with fire, because obviously water is sort of a novel visual technique where you can kind of do a lot of interesting things. With fire, I'm not entirely sure. We got some concept art of new characters and new designs and things like that, which it looks fine. It looks different, looks good. But we'll have to see, what's next for Jake and his family. So yeah, there's that. But James Cameron talked about the fact that there's going to be new settings, there are going to be fire tribes, and what he also said was this film was going to be more emotional, which, I mean, I don't know. Sure. I don't quite know what I expect out of these Avatar films at this point, honestly, because I just kind of go into them being like, I just show me what you got. So if it's going to be more emotional, great. I'm just looking for something different and something unique that, comes from James Cameron's mind. So yeah, there's some news on Avatar 3, Avatar, Fire and Ash. But the third thing, live action thing that, before we get to the 2 actual trailers, because this is sort of a semi-trailer as well, but this is really more of an announcement that Percy Jackson Season 2 is officially in production. We knew that Percy Jackson 2, based on the book The Sea of Monsters, was greenlit a while ago, but now they're officially going into production, which is really exciting because it'll basically mean that we'll get I think a new season hopefully within 2 years, because the last season came out in started coming out in December of 2023, and I think it ended in January of 2024, which was, I thought the first season really solid. Not the best thing that's ever happened or anything like that, but it kind of gave me that Harry Potter sense where you have the first film, which was not, in hindsight, it's not spectacular or anything like that, but it set a foundation that was really solid with these actors, and then they're allowed to grow into their roles. And you already see Walker, is it Scobell? The main actor who plays Percy Jackson, he's already, his voice is already deeper. He already looks a little older. So I think it's really exciting actually to get to see these actors actually grow into their roles. I'm hoping they greenlit more than another season. I'm hoping they greenlit a couple seasons because the point I wanted to make about this, as we see this production teaser, which is on the channel, if you want to check it out, is that you have these shows that like some shows just take years and years and years to get new seasons for, which really sucks, because previously new seasons of television would just come out every single year. This isn't coming out a year apart, because they needed to renew the season, I suppose, after seeing how the first one went. The first one was very, very successful. It was pretty well received, and I'm hoping that they greenlit more than one new season so that they can kind of just keep rolling back to back to back. So because these kids are going to grow quickly. And that is one logistical thing you have to consider when making a franchise like this. Now, unlike Harry Potter, there are only 5 books in the main franchise instead of 7. So that is an advantage. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to Sea of Monsters. It heads into production soon. And the overall point I wanted to make is that I think we'll get this probably, if I had to guess, I would say in a year. So if we're going into production now, I'm assuming cameras will roll before the end of the year, maybe in October, maybe November. Hopefully we'll be done shooting in about January, February, March, and then we'll head into post-production, and hopefully, maybe in a year. By next D23, we'll have, kind of like right before Percy Jackson Sea of Monsters comes out, we'll have, some hype coming around it, and then we'll get to see it pretty soon. So I'm really excited. I really enjoyed the first season. And then finally, like I mentioned, we have 2 full-length trailers to talk about here, and we'll start out with Snow White. So Snow White released a trailer starring Rachel Zegler and Gal Gadot, and I mean, of all the Disney animation films that you could have remade, because I guess they're literally going to remake every single one of them, Snow White was probably on the list of least interesting to me. It's not one that I was personally, I had not really seen a lot as a kid. It's not one that I had a ton of nostalgia for. So I watched the trailer because I know there was a lot of controversy around Rachel Zegler, which I think personally was really overblown. I think West Side Story is phenomenal. I loved Rachel Zegler in it. She didn't have tons to do in Shazam! Fury of the Gods, so I'm not really going to comment on that in terms of her acting. But she's a phenomenal singer, incredible singer, and she's a really good actress as well. So was interested. Gal Gadot as the Queen, I was like, okay, maybe we'll see how it goes. And so we took a look at the trailer, and it looks okay. I think that the dwarves still look really weird and very CGI, which I guess is the point at this point. It's just that they're supposed to look that stylized. I don't know. It still does not really sit right with me in terms of what I'm looking at on the screen. I look at them and I go, something's off here. That being said, also the fact that they're not calling it Snow White and the Seven Dwarves, because I think there are a lot of interesting problems that come up these days with making a film about seven dwarves and Snow White. But they look odd, is what I will say. Like CGI wise, I mean, they look a little weird to me. Very uncanny valley, if you will. But yeah, Rachel Zegler looks fine. We didn't really get to hear a lot of her singing. We heard a little bit of it. And then we didn't really get to hear her talk as well as Snow White. We saw a little bit of Gal Gadot, who I think looks okay. It's kind of on the borderline because you can kind of tell she's trying to be very sinister as the evil queen, but also it's Gal Gadot. I mean, she doesn't have that kind of general disposition. I haven't seen a role where she's really had to be sinister, and this is going to be an interesting change of pace for her. So we'll see how she handles that. But yeah, I mean, it's it looks okay to me. I don't have a lot to say about it. I believe it comes out early next year, and we'll have to see how that turns out. The final trailer, though, that we got from Disney Live Action was for Mufasa: The Lion King, which is a prequel film to the quote-unquote live-action / animated / CGI Lion King film that was directed by Jon Favreau, which I thought was okay. I thought there's still something a little weird about these really photorealistic animals talking. Something is a little weird about it, like compared to The Jungle Book, which I thought was fantastic. And perhaps it's just missing that element of having one human interact with them. I don't know. Because I think The Jungle Book is by far and away the best live action remake that they've done. It's really good. If you haven't seen that, check it out. 2016's The Jungle Book. But anyways, yeah, Mufasa the Lion King, it's kind of, it's a situation of, did we really need this? What's the point of this? But we got it, and it looks good. We're getting the origin story, I suppose, of Mufasa and Scar, which is interesting. And we get cameos at the beginning from Timon and Pumbaa as well. So I think Rafiki as well. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm not entirely sold on this film. I will probably check it out anyways because it's a Lion King film, and Lion King is amazing. But my sense with this trailer is that if you enjoyed, like, to what degree you enjoyed the first Lion King, and by first Lion King I mean the last live action CGI Lion King, it feels like you will enjoy this film the same. I could be totally wrong because Barry Jenkins is directing this film, and he was the director of the Best Picture winner, infamously / famously, that Oscars where they mix up the winners. He was the director of Moonlight, that won Best Picture. So, I mean, they got a really, really great director to direct this film, and he seems to have a vision for it. So we'll see. We'll have to see. I'm curious, is what I will say. And for somebody, like myself, if I'm correct in saying that, to the degree you liked the first film, it seems like you like this film, then I think I'll enjoy it somewhat and then kind of move on. But again, it all just depends on the story that they're trying to tell. and how well they execute that. So those are all the announcements for the Disney live action projects. Let me know in the comments down below which one you're most excited about. So let's now move on to the final two segments here, which are probably the two segments that my audience is most interested in talking about. And we will start out with Star Wars before we get to Marvel and wrap up the announcements from the panel. Thank you guys again. If you're still here, sticking around all the way through, or if you just watch individual segments. As always, I'll be posting these as individual segments in the coming days on the YouTube channel. Just keep leaving comments, engaging, and I will be sure to respond to all of them. Interestingly, and I suppose we'll reiterate this with Marvel as well, we did not get a lot from Star Wars and Marvel. And for Star Wars, I suppose, and we'll talk about my thoughts about that with Marvel. Star Wars, I think that's okay. Because it's because of one reason in particular. Because they've been overpromising over the past 5 years. They've promised us so many different projects that sound amazing, and yet the next film that's coming out wasn't even on the slate of projects that came out, or that they announced last time. Which the three films they announced last time were Dawn of the Jedi. I guess this is one. I should take that back, because the three films they announced were Dawn of the Jedi with James Mangold, which I really, really hope comes out. That would be so cool. Then they announced a Rey movie / something like a bridge, I guess, to an episode 10, or maybe even episode 10, who even knows. And then a Dave Filoni Mando film, which maybe that's what this film has evolved into. Maybe, but yeah, who knows how many of the characters. Well, we'll talk about some of the characters that they announced will appear in this film. But yeah, I mean, it's, this is sort of a film that wasn't even on the radar the last time they made announcements. And let's not to mention Taika Waititi's film. Sean Levy is still in development of a film. Apparently, Kevin Feige's film is dead. There was a Rian Johnson trilogy that was dead. I believe Benioff and Weiss had a trilogy at one point. Patty Jenkins had Rogue Squadron. So it's just been a disaster. And so in that regard, I'm actually okay with them just talking about what they have in store. Would I have liked some announcements about Ahsoka Season 2 and perhaps the direction that they were going with Baylan Skull, for example? Rest in peace, Ray Stevenson. He did a fantastic job in that series, even though I didn't love the series as a whole. Would I have liked to have heard some announcements about that? For sure. And would I maybe have liked to have seen maybe an announcement for another animated series or something like that? Sure. But I think to focus in on the projects that are pretty much in production and in development and ready to be released, I think is fine. I think it's totally fine. So for Star Wars, while initially I was expecting a little bit more, I also was like, if you're only gonna talk about what you have ready, and it does, fingers crossed, knock on wood, right here. It does look like Mandalorian and Grogu is finally going to go into development. It would look like we're going to finally get a Star Wars film, I believe in 2026, which is still a long ways away. But anyways, I'm really hoping and really excited about that, because we haven't had Star Wars since 2019, and 2019 was Rise of Skywalker, and even before that was Last Jedi, and that split the fandom. You guys know my thoughts on Last Jedi. I love The Last Jedi, but not a lot of people do. And that's totally fine. That's totally your right to. But the Star Wars fandom has just been with Ahsoka and Book of Boba Fett and Obi-Wan and Acolyte. It's just been a mess. So to get a feature film that will hopefully be taking the best parts of Mandalorian and Baby Yoda / Grogu is exciting. So I guess since I'm talking about it here, let's just start out with Mandalorian and Grogu, and then talk about the two TV shows that they talked about. So Mandalorian and Grogu, we got the logo. Looks, it's Mandalorian, and then underneath and Grogu in the same font. Great. Really not a whole lot. I think they're going into production and shooting it pretty soon, maybe early next year, if not late this year. But we got, I think, two notable announcements from it. Number one is that Zeb, who appeared at the end of Mandalorian Season 3, which I think a lot of us would agree was not our favorite season of the show. It certainly wasn't mine. I think it was definitely on par with something like, an Ahsoka or Book of Boba Fett even, or an Acolyte in that Obi-Wan kind of vein. Definitely not up to par. But we did get to see live action Zeb from Rebels, and it seems like he will be coming back for Mandalorian and Grogu. How much of the rest of the crew will be showing up, and whether or not this is actually going to be that big post episode 6, pre episode 7 team up movie with Thrawn that we were promised, who knows? Who knows if you will even get that movie at all anymore, or if it'll just be a TV show. I don't know. I'm assuming they're still aiming for something like that. Maybe Ahsoka season 2 or 3 will be that big team up. I don't know. Maybe it'll just be Mandalorian and Ahsoka and Grogu and Boba Fett and everyone. I don't know. Maybe Boba Fett will show up in the film. Who knows? But we got an announcement at any rate that Zeb will be appearing in the film, which is, interesting. Maybe Hera will show up. Who knows? And then the other thing, which I think is kind of interesting, I don't know if I love this, and I'll talk about why, because it may not seem obvious why I don't like this, is that the Razor Crest will also make an appearance again, will return. And look, I love the Razor Crest. I think it's a fantastic design. It's so iconic, and it's so rare in these days, post George Lucas, to make ships that are as iconic as some of the original ships and designs and creatures. The Razor Crest was one of them, which is so interesting because it's a gray ship, doesn't look that special, but it captured our imaginations immediately. But what's interesting about this franchise is that they seem to be a little too reactionary for my liking. And what I mean by that is that if you remember from the first film, the first couple seasons, we had this big whole thing about Mandalorian and Grogu, them bonding and all that kind of stuff. And then at the end of season 2, Mando had to let Grogu go to Luke Skywalker. But then fast forward to Book of Boba Fett, and it's almost like, they panicked and they were like, uh-oh, we're trying to make Mandalorian season 3, and we realized we can't just make a Mandalorian show, God forbid. Which I don't think is true at all. I think they totally could have made just a standalone Mandalorian film, and Grogu could have come back in that big team up or whatever, whatever. But no, they decided, we need him back. We need him to come back because fans won't like the show if he doesn't come back, which I don't think that's true. Perhaps the numbers would have gone down, but if you just told a good story, I think the numbers would have been fine anyways, especially for season 4, because after how disappointing season 3 was, if they're even going to do season 4, or this movie. Perhaps if season 3 was really good with just Mando, and then you announced he was coming back for the movie, could have been even better, for that. But at any rate, I digress. So I don't know. I could be totally just, paranoid and spiraling a little bit. But it seems like the Razor Crest coming back as well is another one of these. Oops, we made a mistake. We shouldn't have blown up a ship in season 2. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. I like the N1 fighter enough. But obviously we love the Razor Crest more, and it seems almost like, hey, they like that more. We should go back on it. I could be totally reading too far into it. Let me know in the comments down below what you guys think. So yeah, there is Mandalorian and Grogu, and honestly, no news at this point is good news. Let's just get this film out and get Star Wars back on the big screen. Now, as for the 2 shows, we'll talk about Andor first, and then we'll finish up with Skeleton Crew in the trailer. So let's talk about Andor. Andor season 2 should be coming out sometime early next year, maybe mid next year. Andor was the one series that felt like it was the most universally acclaimed by fans of Star Wars. It didn't have that traditional lightsaber combat or anything like that that we were hoping to see from shows like Acolyte and Ahsoka and whatnot. But it really did a great job of being a spy espionage thriller kind of show. It's a show that I do really need to rewatch because I do think it benefits, that this is the kind of show that would benefit greatly from a binge. Because yeah, it's like sometimes seeing it week to week, I was a little bit, it didn't have those kind of natural hooks to keep me going between episodes. And if you disagree, let me know in the comments. Like, it's just totally a subjective thing here on my end. But I enjoyed the show immensely. I think Stellan Skarsgård's speech obviously is amazing. I also think that space battle that he had with his ship was also quite underrated, honestly. And so I'm really excited about that. We did get a few announcements for this, a couple of which I think we knew. And a couple which are, I think actually most of these we knew. So we'll just kind of run through these and then we'll talk about Skeleton Crew. We got confirmation this takes place over 4 years. And I believe the last scene we heard from Tony Gilroy, who is the showrunner of this series, and who did a lot on Rogue One as well. I believe a while ago we got confirmation that the last scene of Andor season 2 will basically pick up right before Rogue One begins with Cassian. So that's cool. And I also think we did know that this film was this series was going to take place over a longer period of time. 4 years is the confirmation now. And I think what's happening, because I think it's going to be 12 episodes, and I think it's like every 3 episodes takes place over a couple years or a year or something like that. We'll have to see how that works out, because obviously the first season was much more linear. It had little 3-episode arcs, but it was much more linear in that respect anyways. But yeah, I mean, we'll have to see how that works out. I'm curious. I'm sure that they're going to pull it off, but I just want to see how they're going to do it. And then also, a couple confirmations that I think were pretty obvious, if not had already been confirmed. Not Grand Admiral. What is he? Admiral Krennic? General Krennic? I forget his title, but Krennic, played by the wonderful Ben Mendelsohn, is coming back in the series. Duh, obviously. Who knows? Maybe Tarkin shows up. I don't know. But these kinds of, they're not cameos, I would say. I think they're going to be big supporting players in the sense that, not that they're going to be in the series for 90% of it, but their presences will loom large because it matters, right? What the Empire is doing. And so I think Krennic will be important in the series, so that's really exciting. Love Ben Mendelsohn. And then Saw Gerrera, Forrest Whitaker will also be back as well. That totally makes sense as well. So yeah, really excited about Andor Season 2. Can't wait for that. And finally, we have the next installment in the Star Wars franchise, which is Skeleton Crew, coming out, I believe, on December 3rd, 2024. And we got our first trailer for it. So what we had heard, this is going to be helmed by John Watts, or showrun by John Watts, who directed 3 of my favorite MCU films of all time, the 3 Spider-Man films. He's amazing. I can't wait to see what he does with this show. What they were going for, he said, was something like Stranger Things meets Goonies meets Amblin kind of thing, with the kids. And yeah, I mean, this is it's definitely led by kids. He said it's not going to be really kiddie or goofy in that way, but it's going to be led by kids on this adventure with Jude Law as a Jedi, which is a revelation in the trailer. And I watched the trailer. I definitely think that some of the visuals are really interesting. Does not look cheap. It looks pretty real, and all that kind of stuff. And the adventure that they're promising seems interesting as well. Who knows? I wouldn't be mad at all if it's just pretty much self-contained, because I know it also takes place between episodes 6 and 7. It's in that time span as well. I wouldn't, be surprised if they show up later if this is a successful show. But, I also would not mind at all if this was just pretty much entirely self-contained. That being said, my main takeaway from this trailer is that in my opinion at least, because the story might be amazing and then I might forget all about this, but from my first impression of the trailer, it seems like my enjoyment of the show and how successful it's going to be is because it has a space adventure kind of feel. It has that kind of whimsy about it that you love from those Spielberg films, kind of with the kids. But I think it's really going to hinge, as all of those films kind of do, on how well the child actors do. I didn't get a good sense of that in this trailer. I think there are some lines that you kind of go, it seems a little bit just like a kid acting, but other lines seem pretty fine as well. It's going to be interesting to see how that alien, kid who talks in basic / English, how that plays out, because it might come off as really goofy looking. I don't know. I hope not. But yeah, I mean, I'm interested. For sure. If it captures that Stranger Things vibe, because Stranger Things obviously show with kids leading the way, but what made that show spectacular, other than the story as well and the visuals and whatnot, were the fact that Finn Wolfhard and Gaten Matarazzo, Caleb McLaughlin, and Noah Schnapp, as well as Millie Bobby Brown, really carried that show in the first season and brought it to success in that regard. So I'm hoping for the same for this particular show, but we'll have to see. So those were all the announcements for the Star Wars panel. Let me know in the comments down below if you were disappointed by any of the announcements, or if you were disappointed by lack of announcements, or if you're excited about anything that's being announced here as we head into our final segment of D23. Alrighty guys, and the final segment that there is to talk about from the D23 panel. Thank you guys for sticking around if you are here. Let's talk about Marvel. Now with Marvel, just like I talked about with Star Wars, we got a surprising lack of announcements. I'm not going to lie. A lot of the stuff that they announced, I think we already knew. In fact, almost everything I think that they announced, except for maybe one thing that's not something I really needed. Maybe a couple things that are kind of odd that we found out about, which I don't know. Maybe. Aside from that, though, I think we knew pretty much everything. By we, I mean people who have been following along with these kinds of news things, but also the people who are following along with these kinds of news things are also the same people following along with the D23 announcements anyway. So it's a little bit of a weird Venn diagram there. Now with Star Wars, right? I said that I think it's okay that they didn't announce too much, because Star Wars has been overpromising and just not delivering at all. Marvel's problem has not been that they've been overpromising, because if you look at the slate that they released a couple years ago, with phases 4 or 5 and 6. I mean, obviously the Kang Dynasty kind of thing, that's not really their fault. you have to deal with it, right? But they quickly pivoted, and San Diego Comic-Con, you can check out the previous videos. We got Avengers Doomsday, right? So they pivoted. That's fine. But if you look at the slates, right, we can talk all day about the quality of these projects, right, with Secret Invasion and Quantumania and the Marvels and whatnot. But they've delivered the product. So it's not the fact that they're over delivering. It's the fact that they're under delivering. But it's the fact that they should be just, quantity wise delivering less, but also they should still be delivering on the things that we want to see, because like the Secret Invasion show that we got, it should have been a movie, it should have been something else, it should have been Captain Marvel 2, I don't know. But yeah, so it's really more of a refocusing effort, which I think that they're on the right track, because Deadpool and Wolverine, really fun. I saw it again for the second time a couple days ago. Loved it. Cap 4 looks great. Thunderbolts looks really fun. Fantastic Four looks really inventive. TV shows, but seems like they're on a better track. Daredevil Born Again looks really interesting as well. So with regards to Marvel and their lack of announcements, I'm not asking Marvel at D23. The reason I'm disappointed is not because I want Marvel to announce, give us a Black Panther 3 and a new title, and show us, Robert Downey Jr.'s first scene as Doctor Doom in Fantastic Four. And, I don't know, promise us Eternals 2 in 2028 and promise us an X-Men like, that's not what I want. I don't care about all that kind of stuff. They know they want to make X-Men probably after Secret Wars or whatever. Totally fine. Great. Totally fine. But there are a couple things that I think they know about, and they know that fans have been asking for, and not just asking for, but these are projects that I think are in production. I could be wrong about this. There might be other logistical reasons that they didn't announce these things, but I'm a little baffled why, for example, where's Shang-Chi 2? You have Simu Liu going on talk shows, and these are, just a little bit of inside baseball. The questions that are asked on talk shows are pre-approved by the studio, by the agent, and by all these different entities, different people, so that they want these clips to come out on the internet, right? So when Simu Liu goes on Jimmy Fallon and says, "Oh no, we're doing Shang-Chi," like when Jimmy Fallon first of all asks him, "Where is Shang-Chi 2?" and Simu Liu goes, "Nope, we're doing it. We're definitely doing it." I mean, that's great, but he's said this a few times now over the last year. Where is it? Where's the announcement? Because Shang-Chi was probably one of my favorite films of Phase 4, if not in the top 2 or 3. Top 5 maybe. I don't remember my own ranking, but anyways, and that's a film that seems important to the multiverse saga. Like, you can still repurpose the fact that maybe the Ten Rings were signaling Kang before, but now they can signal something else, like Doom or what, I don't know. Bottom line, it was a film that was maybe not financially successful, but it also came out right at the tail end of 2021, which was still pretty much in the middle of the pandemic. So you can't really blame that. It had a great critical rating and success. People loved the film. Where is it? Where's Shang-Chi 2? It's been 4 years now. It's going to be 4 years soon. I guess 3 years now. And they haven't even, there's not a word about it. And I mean, it's not coming out in their 2025 slate. Is it coming out in 2026? I don't know. So there, that's one project. Also, what about Wonder Man? I mean, can we just get a quick update on Wonder Man? Because we know that's coming out. Vision Quest, maybe? Because the stuff that they did talk about, I was like, yeah, no, we got it. Like, we know that. So, again, my disappointment is not that I'm asking for an entirely new X-Men cast, right? I don't care. I don't want that, honestly, right now. I don't. I don't want to know who the new Wolverine is until you're like a year out from, the X-Men, or a year out from his first appearance or whatever. I don't really care. I just want to get some updates on projects we know are in production and coming out. That's all. Because honestly, the less they talk about Shang-Chi 2, the more nervous I get. Eternals 2 being canceled is, I'm not happy about it just because I like Eternals 1 a lot, and I know I'm in the minority on that. But I understand why, right? Because it didn't do well critically, it didn't do well financially. I get it. I get why we're not doing Eternals 2. Shang-Chi 2 not happening right now, not being in production, is baffling to me. So I'd love some information on projects like that. Even Doctor Strange 3, I don't know. I mean, that's just a rumor, so I'm not, not terribly concerned about that right now. That being said, let's talk about what we did get. So we got some small updates from Captain America Brave New World, Thunderbolts, and Fantastic Four, which all were talked about a couple weeks ago in Comic-Con, so they really didn't need to talk about it that much, and they didn't. We got a clip that was released at D23 from Captain America Brave New World, apparently showing Ross talking about adamantium. We did get we saw a first picture of Thunderbolt Ross as Red Hulk looks good. I've been on the record saying that I'm not the most excited about a Red Hulk, but if you're gonna do it, he looks good, looks fine. So there's that. And then in terms of Thunderbolts, not that much. It seems like we just got another picture of Yelena, is what I saw going around on social media. And then Fantastic Four, we got some videos from on set. Looks cute, looks very interesting. They look like a family. Johnny's wearing the suit, or a version of the suit, which is very 60s, kind of very olden times, like older comic book runs, the Fantastic Four, not the John Krasinski version of the suit, for example. So there is that. Also, Michael Giacchino is scoring the film, and we heard the first themes and first music. Sounds great. Really excited about it. Also, by the way, just a side note, Kevin Feige, I'm 90% sure was seen at D23 wearing a Werewolf by Night shirt, speaking of Michael Giacchino, and wearing a Spider-Man hat, I think, is what people said. I saw the picture a while ago, and I don't remember. Why would you do that if there's nothing to tease about those projects? Because I would love to see Midnight Suns and Werewolf by Night again, for sure. And obviously Spider-Man 4, although I have, my suspicions that they're not allowed to talk about these Sony projects at D23, I think is what's going on here. So there is that. Because you notice that they never announced these Spider-Man films at Comic-Con or at D23. I think there's a very specific reason why. Because it's not just Marvel Studios, it's Sony. They probably want their whole, another separate panel to talk about it or whatever. So yeah, there's that. So those were updates on those 3 projects, and those will be coming out over the next year. Nothing on Blade, obviously, because Blade needs a director, and Blade may never come out again. There were briefly, just to address it, the cast of Ironheart was there. Ironheart, it's crazy. I saw something where it said the series wrapped filming in late 2022. Crazy. I don't quite know what's taking this so long. Because again, I mean, you released Secret Invasion just like that, and I don't know, that didn't turn out that well, but you did it, so why didn't you hold Secret Invasion for a little while longer? Was it because of the Marvels? Clearly not, because those two had nothing to do with each other other than Nick Fury going to space, which you could have totally just deleted that scene at the end and just had this be post the Marvel. Anyways, it's a whole other aside. I'm curious to hear what's taking Ironheart so long. It can't be the VFX, I don't think. It's been 3 years, so yeah, I mean, this is a series that's supposedly coming out in late 2025, which will have been 3 years after it was done shooting, which is a long time. But we'll have to see. It's starring, Anthony Ramos, who's great, Riri Williams, Dominic Thorne, and then also you had Alden Ehrenreich. So yeah, I mean, there's some things to be interested about for this show. It's definitely not on the top of my anticipation list, but it's coming out. But yeah, let's talk about the other 2 shows that were given more of a spotlight. First of all, starting out with Agatha All Along, we got another trailer, and I mean, look, there are things to like, in my personal opinion, because I've been on record of saying I wasn't a huge fan of the first trailer, and there's something about the show is not super enticing to me. I really enjoyed Agatha as a side character in WandaVision, which is still one of my all-time favorite Marvel projects. I am so happy they did that show, and it gives me some hope that Jack Schaefer, who show ran WandaVision, did that show, and she's doing Agatha. Okay, great. And there's some things to like from the trailer. Catherine Hahn has charisma for days. Interesting that they're doing musical elements. I think that adds at least a little bit of a different flair to it. Some of the horror elements look very fun and very interesting. I'm not a big fan of gory and gruesome horror. I'm just a big fan of just kind of, not goofy horror, but, like sort of scares, like creepy things maybe. Like Stranger Things kind of horror, for example. Although Stranger Things Season 4 got kind of into that gory horror. Anyways, but otherwise it looks a little bit boring and a little bit cheap. And it's almost like, okay, we're just going to do 9 episodes where every episode they're on the Witch's Road. I guess so. My question really is more just what's the point of this show? And why are we doing this? Other than it got greenlit a while ago and we just need more content. I hope that's not the only reason. I hope there is some point to this. If we make a Midnight Suns, let's have Agatha be a part of it. Let's have all these disparate characters team up. So we have, Agatha Harkness, we have Werewolf by Night and Elsa Bloodstone, Man-Thing, Moon Knight, Blade eventually, Black Knight. I really hope we can make that happen, because that would be so cool. Can you imagine if they brought that lineup out of, Gail Garcia Bernal, Laura Donnelly, and then it would be Oscar Isaac, Catherine Hahn, Mahershala Ali. I think that would be really exciting, honestly. So I hope they can do that someday. So yeah, I hope that this is not just a throwaway. Like Echo seemed to kind of just be a throwaway. I don't know if we'll ever see Echo again, which is a little sad because I think her character has a lot of potential. But anyways, yeah, that's the trailer for Agatha. And then finally, to close all this out, I think we got the most details, honestly, from Daredevil Born Again. We had most of the cast up there. So we had Charlie Cox was there, Karen and Foggy were there, and then obviously Vincent D'Onofrio and John Bernthal as the Punisher. So that's the big thing that they talked about, is that John Bernthal will be returning as the Punisher. Very exciting. Couple other things that we did kind of know already is that White Tiger will be showing up. I think we knew that from set photos and stuff like that. Other interesting details, season 2 will begin shooting, because I think originally Kevin Feige was like, this is 18 episodes long, and I was like, whoa. But that was at the time when it was going to be this sort of legal procedural. But I'm really glad that they've pivoted now and just said, we're just going to turn this into season 1 and season 2. Great idea, honestly. I think that's a great move. And so season 2, I hear, begins shooting very soon. That's very exciting. I'm just kind of going off of, in order from things that we kind of already knew to more surprising things. Speaking of interesting things, Daredevil and Kingpin will be working together, it looks like, against, and this is the other big announcement, that Muse will be the villain of the series. And now I don't know a whole lot about Muse as a character. Did a little bit of research, and it seems like Muse is a serial killer. So that'll be interesting. I do hope Kingpin stays a little bit towards the antagonistic side, though. I don't like. I should say that there are probably interesting reasons to have Kingpin be on Daredevil's side, but they work best when they're in opposition to each other. So I hope this is sort of a temporary thing before they get into season 2. We'll see. But the other really interesting announcement I can't believe this is an announcement, but I guess it is that Miss Marvel, her dad, Kamala Khan, will be showing up. Kamala Khan's dad will be showing up in Daredevil Born Again, which on the one hand, great, because I love Miss Marvel and her family is my favorite part of that show. On the other hand, what? Why? But I guess, I just didn't know why it needed to be an announcement. Like, I would have been more than happy to have seen it happen in the show, where maybe Matt Murdock is in Jersey for something and defending her family from something, DODC related. I don't know. I was, when I did my She-Hulk rewatch video, which you can check out on the channel, one of the things that I was talking about there was that I had wished that because of the legal procedural kind of nature of that show, that we would have gotten a lot of MCU cameos, not for the sake of cameos, but just to show that she's connected in this world. Like, she's a superhero lawyer. So instead of defending, Mr. Immortal, who is cringy and just weird inclusion into the show, she could have been defending Kamala Khan from DODC, or she could have been defending Peter Parker at the time. I don't know, something like that. And so, yeah, I mean, I would have hoped that kind of thing would have happened. It didn't. Only real big characters there, I suppose, which I think they did really well, were Wong and Abomination. I thought that was great. And so I'm wondering if Kamala Khan will show up in Daredevil Born Again, if she's going to have a role to play. Obviously, New York and New Jersey are relatively close, so we'll have to see about that. Yeah, but that's it from the Marvel side of the panel. Obviously, kind of a lack of announcements here, but I don't know. We'll see. Maybe it's a case of Star Wars where I'm hoping that, the next projects we're going to get seem to be Cap 4, Thunderbolts, Fantastic Four, and then Agatha this year, Daredevil and Ironheart next year. And look, I mean, as long as they're just focusing in on the quality of these projects, then I have no problem with this. I'm hoping that we, at next year's Comic-Con or sometime at the beginning of next year, we get announcements of things like Shang-Chi 2, maybe a Doctor Strange 3, updates on Wonder Man, Armor Wars, things like that we know are coming. We know they're coming. And I just like to get some confirmation about that as well. But again, at the end of the day, I should say, not too disappointed with the convention as a whole. It's just not quite what I was expecting, is all. But let me know in the comments what your favorite announcements were and what you were hoping to see from the Marvel side of the panel. And guys, that'll do it for our coverage of D23. Thank you so much for joining us. As always, these clips will be posted on the channel in the coming days. So if you want to just check out a particular video, they will be up there as well if you want to rewatch and re-listen to my analysis there, or share it with your friends. If you don't want to listen to the whole podcast, totally fine. Make sure to do so. Check out those clips that will be coming out in the coming days. But otherwise, it's been a really fun couple weeks. I may be taking a break from the news-oriented podcast like I mentioned a few weeks ago. If you haven't checked out the episode, I believe it's episode 30 I did a couple months ago where I talked about some updates on the channel. We will be launching into a DCEU rewatch series sometime soon. And it's going to be a little bit different because I think as of now, I have the capacity to be able to do weekly podcasts for the foreseeable future, which I really want to be doing. I really like this format where I'm doing sort of a wrap up of the week, sort of recording it on Saturday and releasing it on Sunday, and then throughout the week releasing clips that if people want to catch up on what I talked about or whatever, they can do that. I really like the format, so I'm going to be doing that for the time being. But there will be some weeks like this week where I just can't. I'm going to be busy and I won't be able to do it. And in those cases, I want to still be able to release something for you guys. And so I've been kind of in the background, just watching some of the DCEU films, taking notes, and recording podcast episodes. And I really hope you guys enjoy. And so unless something drastic changes, we will be starting out with Man of Steel next week. Can't wait to get that started with you guys there. In the meantime, if you haven't subscribed to the Access Blockbusters YouTube channel, if you're watching on YouTube, make sure to do so. Give the video a podcast a like. Let me know in the comments what you are most excited about. If you're listening on Spotify, make sure to rate it on Spotify and let me know in any of the platforms how you are enjoying the podcast. That'll do it for me for this episode of the Access Blockbusters pod, and I will see you guys in the next one.